Hi. So I wanted to do a video for the last couple of weeks, but I just haven't gotten to it, and I finally have the time now. So um, this is kind of like a story time, I guess you could say. I recently went to Jamaica, but Jamaica was great. I enjoyed the trip um, while I was there. But the video I want to make today is not about the trip so much as the transportation and getting there and coming back. So, getting to the airport was no problem. I booked my flight for the Monday to be leaving at, I believe it was 9. Can't remember. 9 in the morning. And it was supposed to arrive in Jamaica, Montego Bay, at 1 p.m., I believe. Um, so I arrived at the airport no problem. Um, I got on the plane no problem, went through security no problem, everything was smooth. It was about 10 to 15 minutes into the air, and this man stood up. I'm sure like some of you probably heard it in the news because it was in the news. He was sitting not directly behind me, but one aisle over and then behind me. And he stood up and he made an announcement. He said, can I have everyone's attention? I have an announcement to make. And like, you're in the air already. Like, what announcement do you have to make in the air? Like, that just my heart kind of like sunk into my stomach. And he's like, just recently I was overseas. He never said China. In the news, it says that he said China. He never said China. He said, I've been overseas recently and I'm not feeling well, and who knows, it could be the coronavirus, so good luck everyone. And then he sat down and he smirked. He like laughed. So we all knew that he was joking, but like, it's not a joke. Nobody laughed, obviously. And when he said it when there was no flight attendants in sight or earshot. So I think he did that on purpose. But one of the customers on the flight went and told one of the flight attendants, and they came over with masks. All the flight attendants wore masks for the duration, of the flight, and they put a mask on him and gloves, and then took him to the back of the plane to be like quarantined away from everyone. And so, as I said, that was 10 to 15 minutes into our flight in the air. It wasn't another 2 hours. We were like an hour and a half away from Jamaica. And they turned the flight around and went back to Toronto. And they did that because there's been no cases in Jamaica of this virus. And so they didn't want to take a chance, which we all understood that. I think everyone on the flight was more upset that it took them so long to turn the plane around. But anyways, so we get to Toronto, we land. The police and Health Canada apparently was waiting for him when he exited the plane. Apparently he did get arrested. When he was exiting the plane, he did not apologize to anybody. In fact, he actually denied that he even said anything, but there's too many witnesses for that. I did give a statement and was told that if it goes to trial, I might have to be a witness, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, so that was my going to Jamaica. So that was on the Monday. When after he left the plane, they made an announcement. Unfortunately, this flight has been canceled. And because we all like thought maybe we were gonna have another flight that day, but no. So it was WestJet, and they put us all up in hotels and gave us all vouchers for food, and which was great because I feel like even though it wasn't WestJet's fault, they actually did a really good job in customer service, and it was a really long day full of lines and waiting and everything, but I feel like they did a good job. So that was that day. Our flight was then the next day at 6:45 in the morning. So I had to be up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was terrible. So got to Jamaica on Tuesday. So I lost the first day. But Jamaica was great. I loved it. It was beautiful. Now I'm ready to leave and go home, and I booked my flight for Saturday at 4 p.m. I think it 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. And I got to the airport at, I think it was like 1, because just in case, I don't know how Jamaica, their airline is. I just wanted to make sure that I got there with plenty of time. So I got there around 1:30, and there was a group of 3 people in front of me, and they were all friends, and then there was 2 people behind me, a mother and a daughter, and so I was second in line, and we all got told at the same time, sorry, flight's canceled, due to, they said something about mechanical. So there was something wrong with the plane. Obviously, they wanted to make sure that everyone was safe, and understood that, but I was still like kind of emotional and upset because I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, like twice. So they told us all, we're putting you up in a resort, because the next flight wasn't gonna be, so that was supposed to be Saturday at 4 p.m. The next flight wasn't until Sunday at 9 p.m. So basically I got like a whole day and a half extra. So it kind of made up for that day that I lost on the Monday, right? So I was upset, but I wasn't too upset. And then they told us, WestJet, there at the airport, told us that a WestJet representative was going to be at the hotel and tell us all the details about the flight and everything. So, and that we would have a shuttle to and from, and all of that taken care of. So we all went to the resort, which definitely wasn't as great as the first resort that I stayed at, but no problem. I'm still in Jamaica. I'm getting some sun. It's great. Then, which I really didn't need the sun because I had a huge, really bad sunburn throughout my whole body. But anyways, that's not talking about that. So, I'm at the resort. It's the next day. We get told that everyone's gonna have a shuttle pick us up at 6:30 to go to the airport for the 9 o'clock flight. So we all got picked up at the same time. We go to the airport, same time. I'm like 5th or 6th in line. And then I get up to the counter and give her my passport, and she's like, I can't find you. I'm like, there's no way that anything more could possibly go wrong. Like, what do you mean you can't find me? So she finally finds me, and she's like, you were supposed to be on a flight this morning at 8 a.m. with Delta Airlines. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I booked through WestJet. What do you mean I was supposed to be on a flight this morning at 8 a.m. with Delta? And she said, well, in the case of a cancellation with the flight, then they would book you with the next available flight, whether it was with WestJet or not. So apparently just myself and a few other people were supposed to be on a flight earlier, and then everyone else was supposed to be on the flight at 9 p.m. because the flight the previous day was a bigger plane than the flight that was going to be on the Sunday. So they had to, like, separate. The problem was, and I told her, I said, I have no access to my phone. I didn't get a roaming package, so I can't receive any incoming phone calls. And I have no access to my emails either, even though I have Wi-Fi where I'm, like, at the resorts, because my email saw that I was trying to get into it, but it's showing an, like, unknown location. It thought that it was fishy, so it automatically locked me out. So I couldn't access my emails. So I told her, I said, I only had you guys, the WestJet representative at the resort, and all the other passengers who got their information saying 9 p.m. That was all I could rely on. I had nothing else. So she said, okay. And that flight, by the way, in the morning that I was supposed to be on was supposed to go from Montego Bay to Atlanta, Georgia as a layover, and then to Toronto, and arrive at 3 p.m. So she said to me, she said, you might have to stay another day, but what you'll need to do is wait here by the desk, and once the counter is completely closed, then we'll see if there is anybody who is a no-show, and maybe you can get on this flight. But she said most likely you're going to have to stay another night. So, again, like, I'm kind of freaking out. Like, you gotta be joking. And also, no, this whole trip, I was by myself. Like, I didn't go with anybody. So I'm alone through all of this, dealing with this stuff. And so it's 7:50 p.m. and the flight is supposed to leave at 9. So this woman comes in and she goes up to the counter and she gives her passport and documents and everything. And I don't hear exactly what was said, but she looks upset, and then the WestJet representative says, I'm sorry, there's nothing that we can do for you. And I hear something about documents. So there was something wrong with her documents or something, I don't know. But she couldn't make the flight. So I literally got the last seat on the flight. I'm almost positive, because once I got on the plane, I was the last seat on the plane. And I stood up once everyone was on there, and I didn't see an empty seat. So I'm pretty sure I got the last seat. So at this point, it was 8 p.m. Like, I got up to the, she told me to come up to the counter and give my passport and how much baggage are you claiming or checking and everything. I'm like, am I going to be on this flight? And she's like, yes. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. and then so I go through security. There's nobody in the airport left. Like, I literally was the only one going through security. The security people were having a conversation. They were bored. Like, I'm not joking. So as I went through, I was gate 16, and they call, as I'm going through, they call, last call for gate 16, so I'm booking it through the airport. And I got to the gate 16 like huffing and puffing. And then once I'm on the airplane, there's this woman that was sitting next to me, and she was like, oh, I had a friend that was on an earlier flight today to Toronto, and because of the snowstorm that was in Toronto, they closed the runway, so they got diverted to Ottawa. So I could have been on that flight that was diverted to Ottawa, but thankfully I wasn't. But the way that I got to Pearson Airport when I was going to Jamaica was through transit and then Up Express. But because I arrived in Toronto at 1 a.m., which, by the way, when I arrived, I was like the only one out of the flight that got sent to another location to get all my baggage searched. But anyways, nothing was wrong with my baggage. But it was 1 o'clock in the morning when we arrived, so by the time I got through everything and I got at the end, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, but Up Express was no longer in service, so I'm like, how am I supposed to get home? I've never used Uber, I don't know how to use it, and I don't want to take a cab, so I ended up taking 2 night buses, and then when I got to the stop, I still had to go walk to, so I literally had to pick up my luggage, and because they didn't plow the streets or the sidewalks, so I had to pick up and walk to my apartment with my luggage in my hand, and then I finally got home at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that was my travel experience, and everything else was great besides, the sunburn and getting an infection on my leg. But other than that, my actual trip was great. But wow, the travel was horrendous. Yeah. Do you have any stories to tell me about, terrible travel stuff? Because maybe that'll make me feel a little bit better. Or am I the worst story you've heard?